the visits that Tony and I have had have dwindled down to single digits.
As in
weekly,
like personal or like phone calls, or personal actually in person, like you said?
A little bit of both, depending on. It would be totally dependent on him because I let him call me.
Yeah, so you're not really reaching out a whole lot. It's just you're there to answer if he calls.
Correct.
Gotcha. And I guess this is somebody that, I guess, without going into too much detail or as much as you're comfortable saying, like, what is Tony's, you had mentioned at the early part of the conversation, hey, you need to go check the internet, like with all of what's going on. Like, what has his reaction been to all of this? When
I had made mention to him that there were YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And the such, he was first of all, he didn't have really any idea of what I was talking about. I mean, I said it to him, face to face, and he looked at me like I was speaking, a different language.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell him, or I wasn't going to show him or send him the videos. I just said, you need to do that.
Yeah. Did he, because do you think he had a grasp of...
He got mad.
Yeah.
I don't think he got mad. He got very defensive.
Right. Okay. Like anyone would in most cases.
Yeah, correctly.
Okay.
Correctly. And I told him, I said, the world of social media has, you've already been, and it doesn't matter who it is or what it is.
Yeah.
In the court of public opinion, you are guilty.
Yeah, because here's the thing. If he wasn't this, I only find this surprising if he was just completely unaware of Kagan's situation, right? If he really didn't know how serious Kagan's acts were and things that he was on the hook for at this point, I feel like he should have just known that this, not that this was coming specifically, but that people were absolutely going to talk about him in relation to this, right? So I don't think I find it odd if he was like fully surprised.
Completely. And I was going to say, it would be a foolish thing to think that he would be not under consideration. Now, I say that, and I don't have Facebook, and I haven't had it for years. When it first came out, I could already tell that was, going to lead to somebody's demise. But as far as I knew, and that would be the only reason that I come up to this conclusion, is because the photos that were on his Facebook page from years ago were being used in YouTube videos.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, if you don't have your Facebook page set to private, you better.
Yeah.
But now, the police are telling me this.
They're telling you what exactly?
And they told me that. They're like, if you don't have your Facebook page set to private, you should.
Right.
People can.
You personally, because someone could find you.
I don't have it.
Right.
I don't have it, so there's nothing on there about me. But the state police were like, to protect yourself, you should have your Facebook page set on private, because if you post something, it's there for posterity.
Right. Yeah, and I guess, I'll chat with you actually once we stop the recording. I would like to actually ask one off the record question then, based on social media, just for the sake of for the sake of how you reached out to me as well. I just don't want to mention that on here. But I guess really the only other thing I would ask is, first of all, I appreciate you chatting with me. If there's any last kind of thing, if you have an opinion about all of this, obviously you don't live in, you don't live in Delphi. We don't, you live in this area. You live in Indiana or somewhat close at this point. So this hits still somewhat close to home. And at the end of the day, this is 5+ years now of not knowing what happened in these this horrific event. Do you have an overall kind of thought of? I know you said it had to have likely been someone that was taking advantage of knowing this area, knowing that people would go to it, sometimes teenagers. It screams to me like a teenager hangout spot that people would like go hang out at or whatever. Do you have thoughts overall of what you think may have happened or who could be involved? Anything like that?
I've told the police. I always thought it was a transient truck driver.
Okay, because I wasn't quite sure what you were getting at with the pig. Is there what do you mean by a pig plant? There's a
hog processing facility.
Okay.
Called Indiana Packers.
Uh-huh.
It's outside of very outskirt of Delphi. A person could walk to that area from there or be dropped off in town and by somebody while their trailers are being processed. It's just a wild speculation.
There's a lot of movement coming from there. Yeah, a lot of people that aren't from there that pull up to that spot. Yeah, I can see where you're going.
There's plenty of semis, plenty of traffic going in and out of there. The place works 3 shifts.
And it looks like that road.
I think there's 1,000 people that work there.
Yeah, it looks relative.
Throughout the 24-hour period, so it is a very big facility.
Yeah, and it looks
the only thing that I had told the police.
Uh-huh.
And I think that the media, in as many times as the quote unquote voice of the video, the down the hill voice, has been said across television and media and whatever happens.
Yeah.
Tony's voice and Kagan's. I haven't spoken to him enough to say that that's not his voice.
Kagan's.
But that's definitely not correct. That's definitely not him in the video.
Mm-hmm.
Kagan, and it's definitely not Tony in the video.
And I've heard that Tony had kind of a higher pitched voice.
He does have a high register voice.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's definitely not that. I hear a southern drawl. In that. In my line of work, I have met 1,000 people in the 4-state touching area, and I hear Northern Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's my own personal opinion. I could very well be all washed up. I know people that have never been in Kentucky that have a southern drawl who live 10 minutes from me that it couldn't be more cityfied if they wanted to be.
Right.
So it just.
Yeah, I think a lot of what people are getting at with Kagan's voice is that phone call from jail that he had. Right. It does it has that similar, and I don't know if it's because we're hearing it kind of come over this kind of crappy jail phone recording. And
I'm sure he's trying to keep it low tone, so the other inmates do not listen in on his conversation or try to.
Kind of has a whispery feel to it. So
exactly. And I understand that. I mean, we could all, change our voices to adapt to our surroundings. So
okay. I'm looking at the map right now of that Indiana Packers Corporation, and I mean, even the road, the Northwest 625 West, it looks like. I mean, that runs right up to the road that goes underneath that kind of southeast part of the bridge. So that's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's a huge. It's right there on that highway at that 421.
Is it 421? Right. Yeah.
Which that all probably goes over 65, I would assume. Yeah.
Since they've redone the highways in the last 10 years, the amount of road traffic up and down that road has substantially decreased. because people are using State Road 25 on would probably be in the. It basically runs through the middle of Delphi now because they rerouted from Logansport, the Peru area, tied all that new highway in all the way into Lafayette.
Okay.
Hoosier Heartland corridor is all fairly new highway.
Look, the Kagan situation, it is like, I understand it. Like, it's like, that's strange. It's very strange. At the end of it all, it could be a coincidence, but
I can see it from Kagan's standpoint is that I've got to get the heat off of me, and how do I deflect all the heat off of me? The quickest way is to throw my dad under the bus.
So I wonder what happened with their relationship to fall out so much, because like if they had this fallout, or if they never were really that close. It sounds like from the stepbrother Bart that Kagan never really got in any trouble. That he was always good with Tony. Tony never really was on, or Kagan was never really on the end of the bad stick there. It's like, I wonder, because I mean, I've never been obviously convicted or accused of anything on Kagan's scale, but if I was even convicted of stealing a piece of gum, like I wouldn't ever dare to just throw my father under the bus. So it's just strange to me. It's like, why, even just to deflect, you'd think he would deflect in another way just to throw someone else under the bus that he may know other than his own dad. So it's all so strange that he would do that, unless their relationship wasn't what it seemed, or it had a bad kind of falling out.
But it also seemed to be that the only asset, if you will, was his father.
Right.
Because I never heard of, and nobody, like I said, I am so far removed from Kagan.
Yeah.
It's speculative for me to presume anything, but I don't even have a clue of who his friends are.
Right. Yeah, and it sounds like he kind of lived
in his immediate circle.
Yeah.
I mean,
he lived somewhat of a lie, it seems like, as well, with just lying about jobs or money that he had or whatever. And so, I mean, even living in Vegas. And so I think that I don't want to say it runs in the family necessarily, but it sounds like the apple didn't necessarily fall too far from the tree in just the kind of compulsive lies or living kind of a double life situation. Yeah. So I
said the same thing, and the police agreed.
Yeah.
That there's either a this could very well be a deviant duo at work together, fulfilling both of their psychosexual desires or needs, or one's stronger than the other. I don't know how that. I can't process that in my head on any level, as far as sharing something like that with my natural father, and even if it extended to what they're being accused of,
right,
is another path that I didn't see coming. Not by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just doesn't add up in my head.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, other than stuff that I know, and I don't know anything.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, at the end of the day, we have what's happened to us. We have our opinions.
Right. Other than the things that I have been privileged from the police of knowing. And the things that have been said to me in confidence, but there's been nothing that I have said here to you today that the police don't know. something that, and actually I want to make this statement. There's been nothing that Tony has said, done, acted out, or sent me via text message that would implicate any kind of guilt or deviant behavior. The guy's never sent me a nudie photo in the 15 years I've had a cell phone.
Yeah.
And the last 8 years, or at least the last 8 years that he's had my phone number. It's nothing that he does.
Yeah.
Now, to me, I don't know what he does or sends to anybody else, but,
right.
You know, I'm close to 60 years old, and I'm not 22.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, just like you don't know what he does behind closed doors with his phone or with, you know, his behaviors.
Correct.
And that way, it's just the same kind of thing that went for you
Sure.
not necessarily knowing his life that he had that was proven through some of these records and things like that. So it's just, yeah, and none of it, you know, implies guilt in this specific situation.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, it's an obvious situation that Kagan is being charged for what he's being charged for, and it's a horrific thing. And now a lot of light is being shed on this life that Tony had, and whether or not at the end of this either of them have anything to do with this, you can't necessarily deny the fact that they have made mistakes for sure, each of them in their own way. But
that is true.
But that necessarily doesn't obviously tie them to this. I get
that's correct, and that's the thing that the state police and I also agreed on, is that all of this stuff piled up in a ball is the last 20 years of his, you know, criminal conduct, things that he's been arrested for or convicted of, does not make him a double murderer.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. And we all agreed, including the FBI profiler.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, that is true. But somewhere along the line, this has antennas, and they used, you know, the ant analogy. You know, here's the body, here's 8 or 6 legs. One of these legs, here's the body of the situation, which is all the criminal and conduct that he's had, and arrests and confinement issues and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, here's his half, and here's Kagan's half, and here's the other leg that goes to this. It's just guilty by association.
Yeah.
We're trying to put the ankle bone to the leg bone, and I'm like, you know what? I get it. I said, but I don't see it.
Yeah.
And you know, and the last I looked, and it goes right back to Facebook, and the state police had told me this, because they pulled his account up, and they're like, do you know how many Facebook friends Tony has? I said, I think I remember at one time it was over 1,000. I mean, it may even be more, and in fact, it was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look and see who they all are. I mean,
right? Yeah. I mean, they've
probably
certainly done that. Yeah.
There's 150 people that are either work associates, friends, people that live in the county or and such. But everybody else, it's fantasy. You know, Instagram girls. You know, girls that post pictures for a living on Facebook. You know, in their underwear, don't have their ass and all that stuff. And you know, you just got to. I guess you got to chalk that up to either being lonely, or you're going to try to pass yourself off as a playboy. And
Well, yeah, I mean, I think
if he needs help if he needs help affirming what he looks like, I will be glad to show him himself in a 6-foot mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the outside, there's not one of those girls that I would consider that would look at him and go, I've got to have that.
Yeah.
Not by a long shot. I mean, I even see the comments that other people make about his physical appearance on the 10 videos that are on YouTube about him.
Right. Yeah.
They're not appealing. I mean, they're not, it's not good.
Yeah. I think people, I think it all goes, for me, I have my suspicions about Kagan, and I just can't quite shake it. And it's just because it would be so different if they found Kagan's phone after, Kagan's in his situation right now with all the things that he's done and he's being accused for.
Right.
If they just found that Kagan had followed Abby or Libby on Instagram or Snapchat, that would be one thing, because he was clearly seeking out images from minors or from girls that were out of his league or just whatever the case was. It would be a lot different than if what we have now, than him contacting the day of or the night before, hours before, whatever it was. And so that's why I can't quite shake Kagan being just not necessarily tied to it directly, but just somewhat in the know of like what could have been happening.
More guilty than not.
Yeah, and certainly more guilty than
more guilty than Tony.
Yeah, and so I get where the association has come through, because guess what? Tony's Kagan's dad. So it's like people are going to take that and run with it. And I think that was bound to happen at some point, just like even the officers told you, hey, delete your Facebook if you haven't already, or private it, or whatever the case may be, because people will dive deep into these cases to to do whatever they can to get more information. And so I'm getting a knock at my door right now. Let me pause for just one moment.
And like I say, it does take an effort for Tony to come here daily. I mean, other than his infirmities, it is, it's a bit of a drive, and it's not terrible enough, but you've got to make yourself a commitment financially to come over here, and he does.
Yeah.
But I have also sat in my house with the television off and the lights off, and watched him pull up in front of my house unannounced and ask me if I'm home. And I'm like, no, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm watching him take off.
Okay.
I don't need this drama. I don't need this bad karma. I mean, two of my closest friends beg me daily to cut my ties off with him.
Mm-hmm.
There's part of me that does, and there's also part of me that doesn't, because of the police aspect. I want there to be some finality to this.
Mm-hmm.
I also am 65-45 on guilt and innocence. Mm-hmm. I think I've 65%. He is adamant about, and the police told me almost the exact verbiage that he used when they brought him into custody.
Mm-hmm.
And got his DNA. They grabbed his dog. He's got a 95-pound pit bull. And, I mean, the dog's a baby, but if somebody come up to his house and started banging on the door, he would crash through that thing and bite your goddamn arm off. It's no joke.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is that I said to the police, Tony said that when you guys took him into questioning, that you took his phone, you took his house computer, stuck him out in the black van, separated both of them, and questioned them. Went through all their devices, and that's when it finally became public that Kagan had basically 5 phones, including an iPad, running at the same time, plus Tony had 1 phone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was with his prior number. And then within a week of that, he had gotten a burner phone. And I'm going to use that. That's not probably the correct term. I think he's using like Boost Mobile, where he goes and buys like maybe 1,000 minutes a month and whatever. So I don't know. I know very little about that, how that process works. But anyway, he told me that he was in questioning for 6 hours. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that, they gave him his phone back and his dog, and he turned around and told them to go themselves and walked out of there. And the lead detective told me, he shook his head and he said, that is exactly what he said, and that's exactly what happened.